Everyone, so today's video is a very quick video on osmosis. It's probably going to be quite fast, but let's get straight into it. GCSE Biology, Osmosis. Okay, so osmosis is the diffusion of water molecules from high concentration to low concentration, but the thing that we sometimes forget is that it's through a partially permeable membrane. We will talk about that partially permeable membrane later, but let's have a quick look at what from a high concentration to a low concentration actually is. So this description here is just basic diffusion, which we have already looked at. We can see that particles over time are spreading out, okay? They go from being really stuck together, very high concentration, to a much lower concentration and spread out, and they're the same concentration throughout at the end, okay? So we can see that we have a high concentration on the left going to a low concentration on the right. Same as when you spray a perfume, you know, same as you're breathing. And this is our description for osmosis here. Let's have a look at our diffusion of water. Okay, so you can see that those black particles are water and the red particles are sodium chloride. On the left hand side we have a very high concentration of water, and on the right hand side we have a lower concentration. Now this is due to the sodium chloride that is present in the water. Okay, we know that osmosis is the movement of water through a membrane from a high concentration to a low concentration. So our water is going to move from left to right because they want to bridge the gap between that difference of concentration. They want the concentration to be equal. Okay, so what we would see is our particles of water would move through the gaps in that membrane, and we will see the water starting to fill up on the right hand side. Okay, so that is our osmosis. Let's start looking at what a partially permeable membrane is. Now, we know an example of a membrane already that we looked at years ago in an animal cell. This is the nucleus, and then surrounding the animal cell is a membrane. Now, every cell in our body is an animal cell, okay? And they all have membranes on the outside. And membranes allow things to move in and out of the cell, okay? So what permeable means is that things can move in and out. And the only way that this can happen is the cell has to have certain pockets or holes inside it, kind of similar to filter paper. Filter paper is permeable as well. Okay, so things can move in and out. So we can see that there's going to be very small holes in the membrane to allow particles to move in and out of the cell. All right? So we can see all of these particles moving around. This is an example of a membrane here as well. So that is osmosis moving in and out through a partially permeable membrane. So we have looked at the meaning of permeable with our animal cell, but we don't really know what partially permeable is yet. So let's go into a bit more detail about that. Partially means not completely, a part or a section or a little small bit of something. So let's have a look at an animal cell again. We have the nucleus, we have a membrane. Let's label these. And let's have a look at how an animal cell is only partially permeable. That membrane will only allow certain things in. So we can see these particles here. They are moving in and out. Okay, there's no problem. The cell is allowing these particles to move in and out. Let's take a look at another particle. Let's pretend that this one is sodium chloride, okay, salt. These are obviously allowed to move in and out because we have cells on the we have particles on the outside and on the inside. Now let's take another one. Okay, let's take a look at one more particle. There seems to be a problem with this particle in the fact that it will not move in, okay? This particle is not allowed inside the cell. The membrane is not allowing it through. So that means that this membrane is only partially permeable. It will only allow certain particles through, okay? So that is what a partially permeable membrane is. It will only allow certain substances through the membrane, okay? Now, moving on from that, very fast, we're going to look at the different types of solutions in osmosis. There are 3 types of solutions, okay? Solution number 1 is going to be hypotonic. Now, a hypotonic solution is when there is lots and lots of water inside and little to no solute, okay? So if there's lots of water, that means that there's a very high concentration of water. Our second solution is going to be isotonic, which means that there is going to be equal amounts of water to solute compared to the cell, okay? This means that there is equal amounts and the water will move in and out at the same rate. We're going to talk about this in a bit more detail in a moment. They are in equilibrium in isotonic. And then the third type of solution is hypertonic. Okay, that means that there is going to be a low water concentration and there are lots and lots of solutes in this. This is hypertonic and there is a low water concentration. Okay, and these are the three examples here. We can pause right now if we need to because they're going to go fast. Now what we're going to look at is what happens to the cells in these solutions. So the first type is hypotonic. The cell is in a place that has a very high water concentration. Okay, we're going to see what actually happens to this cell when it is in a very high water concentration solution. So this is a container with a cell, and we can see all of these water molecules on the outside, but inside this cell there are a few solute particles as well, okay? On the outside there is a lot more water than inside the cell. And we know that this water is going to move from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So the water is going to move from outside of the cell into the cell. Okay, now what do you think is going to happen to this cell if lots and lots of water is going to move into it? This cell is going to start getting larger, it's going to try and accommodate, and eventually if water keeps on moving in, the cell is going to burst. Okay, that cell will get larger and larger and larger, and eventually that cell will burst if too much water moves in. Okay, and here we have an example. This is called cytolysis. Our second type of solution is isotonic, and as we said, there are equal concentrations on the outside and on the inside. So they're going to have the same concentration of water on the outside of the cell as it does on the inside of the cell. So there's some water on the outside, there's some solute on the outside, but there's also water and solute on the inside. So that means water is still going to move into the cell, but it's also going to move out of the cell because, as we said, the water concentration outside the cell is the same as inside the cell. So if water is moving in and out at the same rate, what do we think will happen to the cell? Nothing, okay? Not exactly nothing, but the cell is going to stay the same size because the water is moving in and out at the exact same rate, so the cell is going to maintain its equilibrium, okay? It's going to be in equal amounts. It's going to be a happy cell. Awesome. Isotonic. Good. So our third type then is going to be hypertonic. Yeah, good. And that means that there is much more water inside the cell than outside because, as we said, for hypertonic, there is lots and lots of solute on the outside and only a small amount of water. So we're going to see all this solute here is being added. This red marker is all the solute. So we know that there is outside a very, very small concentration, low water concentration, okay? This is due to the solute. And then inside the cell, there is a very high water concentration. And we know that in osmosis, water is going to diffuse from a high concentration to a low concentration. That means that water is going to move out of the cell into the solution. What is going to happen to our cell when water moves out? It is going to shrivel up and could possibly die as well if it's irreversible. So the cell will shrivel up, and this is called plasmolysis. Okay? So let's have a look at a quick exam question. The question is, explain how water in the soil is absorbed by the plant roots. Okay? Now we know that plant roots, they're quite a large system, and we are going to zoom in here to a plant root. And if we zoom in, we can see that it has these extensions at the end, okay? These extensions are called root hairs. So you will learn this in biology. You may already have. If we're going to zoom in again on this, we're going to zoom in on one of those root hairs and we're going to look at what is inside that root hair, okay? There will be water inside the root hair, but there's also going to be lots and lots of solutes and solids and nutrients and minerals and all of these different things that make this concentration of water on the inside of the root cell very, very low. And then the concentration of the water in the soil is going to be much higher. Okay, so we can see that there are tons and tons of solutes in that root hair. So what is going to happen is the outside of the root hair, the soil, is going to have a much higher water concentration than inside. Okay? And we know that in osmosis, we have to explain this as well for a full mark answer. In osmosis, water molecules diffuse from an area of a higher concentration to an area of a lower concentration. It is very, very important if you are asked why does osmosis occur or explain, you have to explain what osmosis actually is. So we'll see that root hairs have holes in them to allow that water to move through, and this here is our semi-permeable membrane. Okay, these holes in the root hair are the semi-permeable membrane that allow water to move through and allow osmosis to occur. Okay, and that is it. That's our GCSE biology osmosis video. I hope that you enjoyed it.